January 2nd, 1967, Colonel Robin Olds and the other 3 F-4 Phantoms of his strike group streak high over the Fujian airfield, emulating a favorite prey of enemy MiGs, the F-105 Thunder Chief. In an elaborate bait-and-switch sting, their F-4 fighters carry an arsenal of weapons built for dogfighting. The radar-guided AIM-7E Sparrow missile can strike targets at over 25 miles away, while the heat-seeking AIM-9 Sidewinder can accelerate in seconds to a speed of Mach 2.5, over 3 times faster than most jets. First supplied to North Vietnam from Russia in March 1966, the nimble MiG-21 was a vast improvement over the MiG-17 and 19. It had greater speed, higher ceiling, and more advanced weaponry. It could reach speeds of almost 1,400 miles per hour, was armed with a hard-hitting 23mm cannon and 2 K-13A ATOL heat-seeking missiles, a Soviet copy of the American AIM Sidewinder.
MiG-21 at altitude was better than F-4. If you could get him down low and in a churning battle, he loses energy in high G turns. So you could battle them down low. Dogfight, if you will. But up high, forget it.
The MiG's opponent is the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom, which entered service in 1960 with the U.S. Navy. The Phantom's 2 turbojet engines deliver a top speed of nearly 1,500 miles per hour. It could strike targets out to 1,200 miles without refueling. Though formidable, it was designed to intercept enemy bombers with missiles, not dogfight.
The weaknesses of the F-4 were it didn't have a gun. The MiGs were real good at employing their gun.
The MiG is more agile than the Phantom above 20,000 feet. It's smaller, harder to spot, and has the important advantage of a gun. But down low, the more powerful Phantom can outturn the MiG-21. The F-4 is faster and has a better rate of climb. It carries a greater number of missiles. The MiG-21s that rise and strike at the masquerading Phantoms on January 2nd are no easy prey.
The MiG pilots, to their credit, were very aggressive, most of them. And it was a great opportunity for us to test our skills.
Olds spots another MiG at 11 o'clock. He breaks left and zeroes in for an easy kill. Olds fires 2 Sparrow missiles. But the missiles lose radar lock and tear past the MiG. Olds sticks with him and fires a heat-seeking AIM-9 Sidewinder missile. But the MiG brakes hard, shakes the missile lock, then dives for cover in the clouds. But as fast as one vanishes, another appears.
Then there was another MiG going 180 degrees to me, fairly close. So close that I couldn't just make a flat turn and get behind him.
Olds must accomplish 2 things. First, he must reverse his direction and get on the MiG's tail. Second, he must create enough distance between himself and the MiG to gain a missile lock. Olds uses a classic dogfighting maneuver he learned in World War II, the vector roll.
I went straight up. When I got up, I turned over on my back and hung there for a moment or, well, a few seconds and watched him. And when the time was right, I rolled to my right. Now he was down to my left, so that this roll would take me in a wide, swooping, downward curve, and I wound up right behind him.
Olds exploits the Phantom's powerful thrust and soars above the MiG. To counter the mind-numbing G's, Olds' G-suit inflates, squeezing his calves, thighs, and stomach to keep blood in his brain and prevent a grayout.
I don't think that MiG saw me, no. The one that was going opposite my direction. If he did, he was stupid.
Olds, now in perfect position, his range only 4,500 feet, arms his Sidewinder.
When I came down behind him, I got a wonderful growl, because the Sidewinder looks at the IR signature of an airplane, the heat waves, and it speaks to you. It kind of mumbles. Then if it sees a good heat source, it goes, and you know that your missile is looking at the target. So it's very simple. All you have to do is pull the trigger.
The doomed pilot doesn't eject. Olds has shot down one MiG, but can't stay for more. His number 4 Phantom, flown by Captain Redeker, is in trouble.
One of his tanks didn't feed. I had plenty of fuel. I could have stayed there, but I wanted to get him home.
Olds streaks out of the combat zone and escorts Redeker to safety. In less than 5 minutes, Colonel Robin Olds and his flight have downed 3 MiGs, with no losses. Forward flight, the second wave of Operation Bolo, engages the enemy. Captain Everett Raspberry, an experienced combat instructor, flies Forward 3. He spots 4 SA-2 surface-to-air missiles hurtling through the clouds at their 4 o'clock. The SA-2 has a top speed of Mach 3.5, over 2,660 miles per hour. This missile can obliterate jets at 60,000 feet. But the Phantoms are carrying the QRC-160 electronic countermeasures pod. The pod, originally mounted on the Phantoms to create a more convincing F-105, now gives Raspberry a lucky break. It jams the enemy radar. The missiles pass to the rear, below the Phantoms, and don't detonate. Meanwhile, the MiGs, now realizing they've been suckered into facing swarms of well-armed F-4 Phantoms, are forced into a fight. A MiG is closing on Colonel Chappie James, the Ford leader. Raspberry spots him.
I thought he was coming after our lead. He kept closing too close. So I tried to get the Ford lead to break to the right 3 or 4 times and he wouldn't go, so I got between him and the MiG.
The MiG is coming up from James' 4 o'clock. When James doesn't break right, Raspberry accelerates to intercept the MiG. The MiG pilot overshoots Ford 1 and snaps into a high G left turn to avoid a fight. Raspberry brakes left behind the MiG, but he's pulling too many Gs on his aircraft in order for his missiles to function properly. Raspberry executes a vector roll. Raspberry pulls out of the vector roll on the MiG-6. He's 3,500 feet behind the MiG in a left turn, the perfect position to fire a Sidewinder missile. Raspberry has to make this shot count. He has just one working Sidewinder. He closes in on the MiG's tail.
I followed the guy down. He was heading for the clouds.
The MiG, focused on getting into the safety of the clouds, makes a frantic dash. But just before hitting the low cloud cover, he inexplicably reverses his turn. It's a fatal mistake. Raspberry now has a perfect shot.
I had the tone in the headset for the missile, which told you it was tracking. Squeezed the trigger, and it went like a bullet right in the cockpit with him, and then he blew up. I almost spun in while I was watching him. It was so spectacular. First time I'd ever shot down a MiG. And so I was excited, to say the least.
Ford Flight has scored a kill, the 4th Bolo victory so far, and suffered no losses. December 14, 1967. 4 MiG-17s have ambushed an F-8 Crusader piloted by Richard Schaffert. The 10-minute dogfight that is about to unfold will push Schaffert to the limits of human endurance. 4 bandits are in the air. The situation is quickly unraveling. The A-4 he was escorting has fled. And now Schaffert faces 4-to-1 odds. He must play to his aircraft's strength.
And I just stood the Crusader on its tail and did what it does best, and that is just climb. Climb like hell. And I went over the top at about 25,000 feet and turned upside down to see what was down there.
The first pair of MiGs are here, in a descending left turn, trying to regain airspeed. The second pair are here, trying to climb to Schaffert's altitude. In his first move, he'll dive past the ascending MiGs, then attack the other pair, who are vulnerable targets given their low airspeed. Outnumbered but unafraid, Dick Schaffert noses down. The Crusader screams past the ascending MiGs at 450 knots. At 10,000 feet, he begins to pull out. The heavy G of the dive rips away his oxygen mask and microphone. He can no longer radio for help. He barrel rolls to the outside and then descends. In doing this, he gets in missile position without losing airspeed. Schaffert gets good tone on the Sidewinder and fires. But he never gets the chance to see if the missile hits its target. At that very instant, a stream of tracers snap over his canopy. The second pair of MiGs have now reversed their climb. Once again, they're diving on him from 8 o'clock high. The tables have turned. Instantly, Schaffert improvises a unique maneuver. He pitches the Crusader down, then rudders left, cutting under the MiG's turn. From the MiG's point of view, it's as if Schaffert simply disappears as he dives and cuts under them. And as quickly as the MiG-21s arrive, they depart. It's a guerrilla tactic often employed by MiG-21s in Vietnam. MiG-21s are a rare commodity for the North Vietnamese, and they're used sparingly. In 1967, there are only 16 in their air force. Using their speed, they streak into the area, fire all their missiles, hoping to score a lucky kill, and streak out, avoiding any dogfights with American aircraft. For Dick Schaffert, exhaustion from the physical strain from several minutes of high-G combat is starting to take its toll. But Schaffert has sunk his teeth into the MiGs, and he's not letting go. The fight goes on. He shifts his attention to the MiG-17s, 10,000 feet below.
They were coming around underneath the position that I was, and this was my chance to make gunfighter mean something.
The MiG-17s are here. Schaffert is above them. He can bank left and begin a dive on them. He'll gain tremendous energy in the dive, ensuring that he doesn't get locked in a low-speed turning fight. The MiG-17's strength. Schaffert noses down and dives on the MiG element. They bank left, hoping to force an overshoot. Schaffert must break up the MiG element. First, he will execute a barrel roll to the outside. Then, as he descends, he'll fire on the wingman. But instead of watching the missile to the target, he'll roll again, positioning himself on the MiG leader's tail. Schaffert rolls. Then fires his last missile on the wingman. He rolls again. As he descends, he switches to guns. The wild maneuver works. The wingman is now out of the fight, and MiG leader is in Schaffert's gun sight. Already in a high G turn, Schaffert tracks the MiG. He closes on him, 2,000 feet. He tightens his turn even more, leading the target.
I pressed the trigger and boom, boom. 7 rounds out of each gun, and the link broke.
The pull of G is so massive it has jammed all 4 of his cannons. The last gunfighter is now out of guns and missiles. A new mission emerges from the adrenaline rush of combat. Survival. Schaffert may not be able to kill his opponent, but he can instill a healthy dose of fear. With violent maneuvering, he'll try to intimidate the MiG into a tactical mistake, and then beat a hasty retreat. He's now on the MiG-6 in a tight left turn. Schaffert breaks out of the turn. The MiG pilot seizes the opportunity and, for a fleeting moment, fires on him, but the tracers miss. Schaffert goes vertical. MiG leader climbs after him. The MiG-17 and F-8 claw for altitude. Schaffert runs out of airspeed at the top of his climb and noses over. The MiG does the same. At the bottom of the dive, they cross paths and climb again. As each pilot jockeys for position, they find themselves locked in a complex aerial maneuver, a vertical rolling scissors. Pilots describe it as a self-generating furball. In the vertical rolling scissors, each pilot rolls around the other while climbing and diving. In the climb, they lose airspeed and the slower aircraft inches closer to his enemy's 6 o'clock. Firing position.
I think we were thinking with the exact same mindset. Reverse it back around and get your nose behind the other guy. This is going to get slow real quick as you're going up like this. And if you get your nose just a skosh behind the other guy, you're going to shoot him out of the sky real quick.
They twist around each other over and over. Both pilots fly at the knife edge of endurance. This grueling fight has been going on for nearly 10 minutes, an eternity in the world of dogfighting.
I can almost sense his nose coming a little farther into me each time as he came around. And about the 5th or 6th time down this, on the downside of this vertical rolling scissors, I could see the next time up is going to be enough inside that his guns will probably cover me and he will be able to fire.
Schaffert must make a move now. They hit bottom on another scissors and Schaffert abruptly rolls out. The MiG pilot is taken off guard and Schaffert uses every bit of his 16,000 pounds of thrust, accelerating away from the MiG at treetop level.
As I look back over my shoulder now, this guy had finished his turnaround, was coming at me, and then all of a sudden he pulled up like this, and I could see the plan view of his airplane, and he was back about 1.5 miles. So he was calling it quits too.
Dick Schaffert's dogfight is a nearly flawless example of skillful maneuvering and maximizing the capabilities of an aircraft. Its every move is studied by fighter pilots today.
It's really ironic to me that arguably the most noteworthy dogfight of the Vietnam War did not result in anybody getting shot down. But considering that he was able to fly home and land back aboard the Oriskany that evening was a victory in itself.
North Vietnamese pilots had tangled with a rare breed of fighter pilot.
They probably had a bottle of cold beer and said, "We just met the biggest maniac in the United States Navy." Because Schaffert just was a wild man. He never gave him a chance. Even when he was out of weapons, he was still at him.
August 5th, 1952. 4 U.S. Air Force F-86 Sabres move into the hostile skies of MiG Alley above northwest Korea. For over 2 years, nimble Russian-built MiG-15 fighters have been darting from sanctuaries in China, challenging American bombers and fighters. The Sabre flight is led by Captain Robinson Reisner. His mission is to find the MiGs and kill them. Suddenly, there they are, 8 silver MiGs passing left to right, 1,000 feet below. Perfect setup. Too perfect.
I can still remember seeing those MiGs below me. That was unusual. Anytime you saw MiGs below you, it was an exciting thing, but we learned quickly to suspect the situation.
Reisner instinctively calls check 6. His wingman responds. Lead, we've got MiGs at 3 o'clock. 6 MiGs scream in from overhead, lethal cannon flashing. The Sabres are in a trap. Now they are the prey. Reisner calls a right brake. The Sabres stand on one wing, pull hard around. Neck muscles strain to keep heads upright against the heavy pull of G. The Sabres turn into the face of the enemy. Reisner is screaming headlong into his first life and death encounter in MiG Alley. 2 years earlier, on June 25, 1950, the North Korean People's Army swarmed across the 38th parallel, the dividing line between the Communist North and the Republic of South Korea. U.S. armed forces, under United Nations auspices, are committed to the fight. The North Koreans have the manpower and tanks, but their primitive air force is quickly shot to ribbons. American aircraft are free to roam the skies. Communist troop concentrations and supply lines are relentlessly pounded from the air. But then, in November 1950, the Americans are stunned by the appearance of new Soviet-built MiG-15 jet fighters. With a top speed of 670 miles per hour, the MiG is 100 miles per hour faster than older F-80 and F-84 jets in Korea. The critical air supremacy achieved early in the war is now in jeopardy.
The MiG was built as a point interceptor. It was light. It had a lighter wing loading. It didn't carry as much fuel, which limited the range, but made it very good for climbing purposes and turning purposes.
It was optimized to shoot down B-29s. That's why it had the heavy cannon armament that it did, 223 millimeters and a 37 millimeter.
The cannon was really a surprising weapon. If the guy was within about 700 or 800 feet behind you and he fired it, you could feel the vibration in your rudder pedals. When that happened to you, you knew you better do something pretty quick, left or right, but don't stay where you are.
The MiG-15s dash from bases in China, just across the North Korean border. Any aircraft venturing into a 6,000 square mile slice of airspace above northwest Korea is vulnerable. American airmen call it MiG Alley. It is here that the fiercest air battles of the Korean War will be etched across the cold blue sky. The U.S. Air Force rushes the 4th Fighter Interceptor Wing to Korea. The 4th is equipped with the new F-86A Sabre jet. It is the only airplane in the Western arsenal that approaches the MiG's capabilities.
The F-86 was my very favorite plane that I've ever flown, which I used to kiddingly call my little sports car.
The F-86 was a pure fighter. It was not intended to intercept or shoot down enemy bombers, but it was meant to take on enemy fighters, destroy them, and achieve air superiority.
The Sabre is a strong, maneuverable, and stable gun platform. the very qualities needed in a good fighter aircraft. Although the Sabre is slightly faster in the crucial areas of rate of climb and altitude, the MiG is superior.
That's assuming that you got the same pilots operating both of them. One of the main things that we enjoyed over the communist aircraft was that our pilots were better trained and we had better tactics eventually.
F-86s launched their first combat air patrols into MiG Alley in December 1950. Captain Bruce Hinton takes first blood for the Sabre on December 17th. The F-86s do well. But there are 400 MiGs based across the Yalu. In 1950, there are fewer than 50 Sabres in Korea. Today, in MiG Alley, Reisner's Sabre flight has just been jumped by 8 MiG-15s.
They normally had high escort. My wingman called out. We had more MiGs coming in on our 3 o'clock position, making a pass on us.
The MiGs are higher and have the speed advantage. If the Sabres continue straight and level, they present broadside targets to the MiGs. If they turn left, the MiGs will attack from the rear. Reisner's only option is to turn directly into the attackers, presenting a smaller cross-section while forcing the MiGs to overshoot. Reisner calls a hard break into the MiGs.
Being a typical fighter pilot, flying that wonderful F-86, we weren't really concerned about these guys. We didn't want them to hit us, though. So we broke into them, made a high G turn into them.
The abrupt maneuver derails the ambush. 2 MiGs overshoot and streak by. The F-86s reverse. As the MiGs dive at the Americans, the Sabres make a hard climbing turn directly into them. The MiGs overshoot. The Sabres then reverse their direction, putting them on their attackers' 6 o'clock. The tables have turned within seconds, the hallmark of jet-age combat in MiG Alley.
I took Taylor and Charlie because he's the closest one to me. And I put the pepper on the tailpipe, pulled the triggers. He lit up like a Christmas tree. You see, we had armor-piercing incendiary bullets in those 650 caliber machine guns.
The burst riddles the bandit's engine. The MiG pulls into a climbing turn in a desperate attempt to shake his tormentor. Trailing smoke, the MiG claws for altitude. The smoke suddenly stops. His engine quits. The MiG coasts upward, bleeding off airspeed. Reisner's F-86 shudders as he chops power and pops his speed brakes to stay in trail. The MiG hangs suspended, motionless, then drops off into a spin. The F-86 buffets as it too loses energy and enters a stall. Reisner kicks in left rudder, noses over, fires another burst into the spiraling MiG, only 300 feet away.
It was a thrill to hear those guns chattering, because something was going to happen up in front, and sure enough it did.
50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary rounds slam into the MiG's aft fuselage. The vertical stabilizer is blown clear away. The MiG pilot ejects. The fight is over. It is Reisner's first kill.
I'll tell you, that was a grand feeling. We were doing what we were assigned to do, and that was to knock every MiG down we could. And that's what I did.